I guess for everyone, you know, my name is David Block. My music is called The Human Experience. I'm a world touring music composer, producer, multi-instrumentalist, visual artist, creative director. I mean, there's a lot of doing, but yeah, I've spent the last 10 years touring and playing, you know, everything from Coachella to the UN General Assembly to, you know, lots of things, and 45 million streams of music and all those cool measures and metrics and things. But beyond all that, I would say that, you know, the foundation of my whole life is trying to be a human being instead of a human doing. And I spent a lot of time doing and making and creating, and I'm bilingual, so actually in Spanish, you know, to do and to make are the same things. I spent a lot of time doing those things, doing and making. But I guess now I'm in this phase of my life and my career where I'm learning the balance of doing and making with being. And figured we'd talk just a little bit about that, because I think it's relevant right now, and just the ability of us to shift our perspective and to being a human being instead of a human doing, and the opportunity of perspective to look at a situation like what we're going through right now, either from the lens of prison or the lens of the monastery. And I think we're in a really unique, can you hear me still okay? No? Nothing?
It's a little glitchy, yeah, but I can still hear your story.
Okay, I'll keep going. So anyway, you know, just our possibility of perspective of looking at this time of when we could easily be called, I guess it really, inability to go other places, I'm certainly confined. But, you know, if I shift my perspective to that of I'm using this as an opportunity to get free of time, to cultivate a deeper sense of stillness and self, I could look at it like a monastery. And that's how I've been choosing to do that. I'm curious. I mean, we have such a small group on here. Probably unmute, or if there's a chat. I'm curious how many people have tried any different kinds of meditation practices. And that can be anything from transcendental meditation to Vipassana, or if anyone has had any experience in any of those practices. And if not, I'll tell you a little bit about the one that I do, which is a practice called Vipassana. It actually translates to observing reality as it is. It's technically Buddhist, but it can be practiced by anyone from Christian, Muslim, Jew. It doesn't really matter. It's non-dogmatic or non-sectarian. Nice. TM, very good. Anyway, it's actually the practice. Our practice is it's not actually meditation, because it's active. Meditation tends to be something that's more single-pointed and focused, whereas Vipassana actually really is observation. You know, and a lot of people are like, oh, well, I've never tried. I have a hard time sitting still. I can't stop my thoughts. And, you know, it's like, well, that's not the goal. You know, the goal is more like how you don't practice meditation to get better. So it's like, well, am I doing a good job meditating? I didn't have a good meditation, value judgment on their meditation. And it's like, if you're just sitting and doing it, you're doing a great job. if you're distracted, now you are aware you're distracted. If your mind's running and racing and you're worried about things, at least you are now aware of things. And the primary objective of the practice that we do, Vipassana, is just awareness of sensations, awareness of things that are happening, not labeling them, not giving them a value judgment, just observing things, and equanimity and balance of what are the feelings of those things. So the practical application, of it is, I'm just reading some of the questions that are coming in here about wellness project and music, which I'll talk about in a second, and the overlap of our insight meditation, this meditation practice, and how that has been fueling and feeding all the ways that I show up in the world musically. And if you have any other questions here, you can just feel free to shoot them in the chat, and I'll do the best to get to them. But anyway, the practical application of this Vipassana is that it's based on the principle that everything in the whole universe is a sensation. They're just information, essentially, and that your beingness, your gut, your heart, your mind, and the other tools that you have to extrapolate what is reality and define reality, all of those are just sensations, and at the root level, they're just changing impersonal phenomena that are happening at the fundamental root level of everything, base layer of existence, basically. And the practical application of that is that by understanding and observing in the finite framework that is your body, this infinity of impersonal changing phenomena, you're able to respond instead of react to life. So through being aware of what is happening at a fundamental level and being equanimous and balanced at the way that all things move in life, the ebbs and flows and the tides of life, basically you win the game. That was the enlightenment of Gautama the Buddha, is this discovery of this rediscovery of this practice, 3,000-year-old practice of Vipassana, which is just basically the observation of sensations within the framework of your own body. Anyway, through that's like, I'm saying this all because in the creative process, I believe there are two major components. One would be the mind, and one would be the no mind. The mind are all the what medium we choose and how we interact with that medium. For example, if my medium is music, my mind would learn piano and maybe Ableton Live and production, and it would distinguish what genres and things I resonate with, and I would learn how to do that thing, and that would be my mind. Then there's the actual song, which is the mechanics of the song are very mathematical, but the soul of the song, I believe, comes from the no mind. And the no mind, you would hear basically every great master from Bach to Basquiat, that there's the best thing that we can do as artists and creatives is learn to get out of the way and let the greater forces that govern in the universe do what they want to do, which is basically experience itself and experience its beauty, which is, the laws of that beauty are math, the proportions that make things attractive, like our T-section and a galaxy and a sunflower, they're all math, and they're all proportional, which is why they're beautiful. Same thing with the harmonics and how the structure of music works. It's all math in terms of its construction, but its soul it's the undefinable essence, or you could say like the Shakti aspect of it, like whereas the Shiva would be this the animating force, and that which is animated is this unnameable, ephemeral thing, you know, that's the no mind. And that's where all the greatest pieces of music and art come from. And we just are, as tools and vehicles, learning how to bring those things into this dimension so other people can experience them. Because all the greatest ideas already exist. All those things are already out there. We're just kind of like tuning forks, and they're just picking up this frequency of what wants to come in. Let's see if there's some questions here. Do you stick? It's no mind for great.
Yeah, sorry. Do you think it's no mind for great artists, or are they so busy doing and being that there's no room for like exogenous thought? My keyboard sucks apparently.
I was like, oh, it's totally different. So your question, tell me if I'm hearing your question right. Is it hard for people to find time for being? Is that your question?
Well, okay, so I've been playing percussion for most of my life, and I've studied a lot of Indian classical music. And I always found Western music quite boring because it was so simplistic that my mind could wander into normal everyday thought. Whereas when I'm playing a composition that I go from
like a raga,
to like 11/4, and then back into a 5/4, there's no room to like think about what I did or did not do for the day because I'm so involved in the thought. The body is like a computer system is overwhelmed, so my spirit can separate. So I guess the question is like, do you think more artists go into the spot where there is just they go through the lack of doing and being, like the sitting like Gautama Buddha, or do they overwhelm their system so much that they have no choice but to be like in the moment of now and present? Yeah, that's.
Well, I mean, I think there's a few different layers. Number one, I would like to say that, you know, just because something's in 11/4 versus 4/4 doesn't mean the value judgment of good or more complicated. I mean, there's plenty of Indian music, for example, that is just one key, you know, like to a drone, for example, and that wouldn't make it less good or less ability to have your mind. I mean, the ability for one to focus their mind on anything is up to that person. You know, you can choose to focus on a singing bowl on a single note and do that for, you know, days if you wanted to, or a gong, or even, yeah. Anyway, so I think there's a lot of different kinds of music, and there's a lot of different things that turn people on with music, and that is a purely subjective experience based on myriad factors. But
I think more of the complexity, like the complexity of the piece allows it so that there isn't room for me to process so much of what is going on. Like, for instance, I spend a lot of time talking with people, and I know that a lot of the time as I'm talking, I don't necessarily know what it is I'm going to say. I'm in the process of discovering it as it's happening. And because of that, I know if I stop to try to think about what I'm going to say, I mess the whole process up because like you said, you get
complex.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. You're breaking up a little bit.
Yeah, it was just a postulate for me because I've done meditations where the idea is just to basically sit, let everything happen, let whatever thoughts flow through. If you want to move your arm to the right, you move your arm to the right. There's no like, no holds barred. But when I'm playing music, when I'm playing in some advanced compositions, that's when I've had some of the most profound forms of meditation, because it feels like my body, almost as a computer, is so overwhelmed by the doing that my spirit has a much easier time separating itself from the physical body.
Yeah, well, I mean, like, look, there's a lot of different kinds of music, and there's a lot of different complexities to music. Like, I'll give you an example, and I think that this is a helpful illustration for people. Um, Modern art, for relative to traditional non-representational art versus like traditional, what we would call fine art or classical art, are very different things. Now, the important thing to understand here is that, and I think this is an easy illustration for people. Rembrandt or the Mona Lisa or the Statue of David has a defined level of, I call it, I couldn't do that. So you look at it and you're like, oh, Statue of David, I couldn't do that. Holy shit, another human being did that. I'm a human being, they're a human being. How the hell did they do that? So it feels impressive and complicated. For example, like or a complex rag, an Indian with like very obscure timing and things like that. Obscure relative to what we've come to known as more normal, which is not more normal, but it's easier on the ears. And there's a reason for that. There's a reason that certain complicated, those rhythms in Indian music can take you to a certain place. There is an intrinsic quality to music and art to take people to a different place. Most music, especially, because it's like a physical vibration, and it's affecting you on a physical level. And people need to understand, you don't just listen to music with your ears, you listen to it with your whole being. Literally, it's going through you. It's a measurable physical wave, which is different than like when you look at a painting, and it's just a different effect on the physical structure of your body. Whereas like a wave is literally penetrating your whole body. And so these different complex Indian rhythms, if no one knows what we're talking about here, it's just like, if you consider like house music, like da, 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 we didn't start the fire. I don't know why that's in my head right now, but like a song like that, it's 4/4. They're like the kind of music that was being mentioned is very complex, rhythmic, and there's an intention to that. I mean, this music's thousands of years old, and it's some of those complex rhythms and melodies are meant to, with microtones, things that are not in the traditional Western scale of music, for example, like, which is just like C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C with sharps and flats. Indian music is, and not just Indian music, but many musics have what are called microtones. They have like flutes and bends and a lot of Middle Eastern music. And anyway, in terms of its quality of like losing your mind and getting out, I mean, as I said, music is very subjective. I know people that I can play certain Indian music for, and they can't stand it. They just can't even listen to the instruments because we're a nature nurture combo. Like they don't like that. Whereas there are people that if you put on rap music, they don't like that. And there's a lot of interesting phenomena, which is why we like things or don't like things. However, and I do think that in terms of, I think it's an unfair thing to talk about the level of complexity, like when I'm talking about the modern versus representational art stuff, to bring it back to that. It's like you look at the Statue of David, or as you said, Rembrandt, or any of the classics, and you're like, holy shit, like I couldn't do that. Like that, you clearly took an expert, the best thing I've ever seen in my life. And then you see something like a Duchamp signs a urinal, and it's like one of the most famous pieces of modern art of all time. And you're like, well, fuck this guy. He just signed a urinal. Like I could do that. But the most important thing I would say is like for modern art is, yeah, I could do that, but you didn't. You didn't do it. And Picasso could paint photorealism as well, but he founded the Cube. When I'm talking about the mind or the no mind, I'm talking about less of the the composition doesn't really care how it's filled up. If you fill it up with two of the perfect shapes, like a perfect cubist painting, or like you look at it, it takes a very specific eye and mind. It's a very Zen practice to look at like modern art or minimalist musics or different things. It's not a better or worse, like as a value judgment, but it's just like there's a lot of ways you can create complexity, like if you look at modern art, it's like texture. You might look just at a painting and it's just like it's an orange canvas and you're like, well, fuck this orange canvas. Like, why is this a $5 million painting? And there's many an argument you can create on the art market, and it's bullshittery for sure, easy argument. But there is something magical to think, like zoom out and look at like the texture of a composition, just the texture, just coloring textures, filling up a space, dive in there. There's infinite layers you can go. And I just think when I'm talking about the mind and no mind, I think it's really important to not just get caught up in like the levels of complexities and of how crazy you can do stuff, and just allow to have a sharp set of tools. Spend your 10,000 hours sharpening your tools on something, but don't let your mind overtake you, and allow what wants to come through you, not necessarily from you, just to happen. And in our practices, I like the phrase wu wei, and wu wei best translates to not forcing, to allowing things to happen. Like we have been so trained to rely on the power of our mind and our intellect, but the good phrase is, the mind is a great servant and a lousy master. And we, as a general population, have let our minds take over, instead of listening to our intuition and to our heart, like our gut, and many of the other faculties we have of discernment. And now we're just, look at what we're doing and look at where we're at, and this idea of diving into self-inquiry. What am I doing? Who am I? What do I stand for? I'm curious. I want to see if haven't gone to the chat in a while. And I'm also curious if people here are familiar. Oh, I have 4 minutes to go. Great. This is perfect. I'm curious if everyone is familiar with Ikigai. And this is a Japanese principle of finding your purpose in life, basically. In India, you call it your Dharma. In Japan, they call it Ikigai. And I have a diagram here, and I would like to share it with everyone. I think it's one of the most important things that humans can do in their life is the self-inquiry process. I'm going to write IKIG. So just Google image search Ikigai and spend an hour doing that. Just look at the circles. It's 4 overlapping circles. You'll see and this is the reason why I'm talking about anything I'm talking about is this idea of self-inquiry. Who am I? What am I do? What is my why? Are my actions in alignment with my why, my core purpose for living, being a human being on Earth 2020? Now, who am I? Look at that. Look at the 4 overlapping circles and just take a moment for self-inquiry. The idea, I guess in our practice, is a law of nature called Dhamma. Just trusting that nature is unfolding and taking care of you. The universe has your back, and it's not just meant to be easy, but the sooner that you can realize that we are all like a tuning fork, and that the more in alignment with what our unique offering is to planet Earth is, without compromising who we are and our integrity, the more we're willing to trust and jump, the more that the universe is like, I fucking got you. And looking into Ikigai will help orient, create your life, and just creating a map and a compass, not just having a map of like what it is, but just helping you redefine your compass. And I think the strongest tool you can to having a stronger compass is self-inquiry and meditation. So